let me ask you about the change in, or the clarification of policy made by Jeremy Corbyn this week. He has come round to backing a second referendum. You must be delighted.
Yes, I'm pleased with that. But I think right now the issue is not really the second referendum or not. I think we get to that at a later stage. The issue as we speak today is, does Parliament agree to Theresa May's deal, which is essentially a blind Brexit? In other words, we don't know whether we're getting a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit. A hard Brexit is something like a Canada-style free trade agreement. A soft Brexit's closer to Norway. And that is a fundamental difference, and we should resolve it before we leave. So the question right now is, do we agree to a deal that essentially leaves unresolved and therefore unclosed the fundamental question at the heart of Brexit? And the reason that she's doing this, by the way, is that the cabinet, let alone the government, let alone Parliament, the cabinet is fundamentally divided on that question. So the risk for Britain is that we leave not knowing what the future relationship with Europe is, pay the money up front, become supplicants to Europe, have no negotiating leverage, and then, of course, it's too late to do something about it if we decide we don't like it.
You sound almost like a member of the ERG in that analysis, if I may say so. I mean, because what a lot of people will say is, yes, that's all true, but no deal is so scary to us that it's worth getting this deal across the line to avoid that.
Yeah, but they're completely wrong, because you're perfectly able as Parliament now, if you have a delay to the process, which you'll probably need in any event, you should use the delay for a purpose. And the purpose should be to put to Parliament, do you want a hard Brexit or do you want a soft Brexit? Now, I believe that when Parliament's faced with that choice, because a hard Brexit is painful, a soft Brexit is pointless, then they will go to another referendum.
Well, let's come on to the referendum then, because it's clear at the moment there aren't the votes in the House of Commons for another referendum. But also, have you any evidence at all that the country wants another referendum?
Well, I think the evidence is mixed, but you can point to evidence that people want another referendum.
Okay.
I mean, it depends what polling you look at, and by the way, what question you raise.
True,
but for example, where if you ask people if you support her deal, should it be confirmed in a referendum? There's actually quite a lot of support for that.
Well, let me give you Sir John Curtis, who is kind of God on referendum questions. And he says there is little sign of any recent increase in support for a second referendum. Delta poll, and they're using new polls say 43% are in favour, 45% opposed, and opinions figures are even more against a second referendum. Yeah, so the country doesn't want it, Parliament doesn't want it. Isn't it time to give up on it?
When you say the country doesn't want it, 43%, 45, I mean, that's pretty even Stevens. But the question for Parliament is, what's the right thing to do? And the risk of her deal is we're going to leave in circumstances where we don't know what we're getting. Now, by the way, Theresa May promised continually, if you remember, we would know in sufficient detail the future relationship with Europe so that we could make a decision. Because she can't get agreement in the cabinet, for example, Liam Fox, you're about to interview, Liam's in favour of a hard Brexit. He's in favour of a Canada-style free trade agreement. Amber Rudd, Philip Hammond, well, opposed to it and in favour of a Norway-style agreement. This is a fundamental question. You've got to resolve it before you leave.
Before we move on to other things, let's just finish with the referendum, because there's an awful lot of Labour MPs who will not vote for a second referendum, 40 to 60 by some accounts. Caroline Flint, who was a minister in your government, says, there are Labour MPs like me who will not support a second referendum. We can't ignore millions of Labour Leave voters. There are people on the Remain and Leave side for whom no deal will ever be good enough. The time has come to recognise that the decision to leave has been made by the British people. Everyone needs to show compromise. Why is she wrong?
Okay, let me explain why I think she's wrong, although I have a great respect for Caroline. First of all, just on the pure politics of it, I think there's very good evidence that a majority of Labour voters want to remain and actually want another referendum. But leave that to one side. What Caroline wants is a soft Brexit. She wants Britain to remain permanently in a customs union. But the problem is, those people driving policy in the Conservative Party, they don't want that. So that's why, if I was her, what I would say, keep to your position of a soft Brexit, but demand that you settle that issue, soft versus hard, before you leave.
So in short, your message to Labour MPs is, whatever you do, vote against Theresa May's deal.
Vote against the deal, use an extension to come to a conclusion, hard versus soft or back to the people. And I think you will get to another referendum when people understand that a hard Brexit is going to be deeply economically painful for the country, and a soft Brexit means that we just become a rule taker. It's in those circumstances that I think you mobilise a majority in Parliament to say, look, the sensible thing in these circumstances is to put it back to the people. Or, by the way, pass her deal subject to a confirmatory referendum.
If there is a delay, how long should it be for?
So I think if it's a purely technical delay, it doesn't need to be very long. I think it should be a delay long enough to give us time to make up our minds.
So I mean, if the EU come back and say 2 years, that's the kind of delay that you'd expect.
No, I think you could have a delay, by the way. I think even if you had a short delay, it's perfectly possible to put a set of votes to the House of Commons that says you want a hard Brexit, a soft Brexit, back to the people. We know what these things mean, by the way. You know, it's not as if we don't know what a hard Brexit looks like or what a soft Brexit looks like. And as I say, the only reason we're not deciding that now is because Theresa May knows if she puts that to Parliament, she'll have a split within her cabinet.